FreeCodeCamp's Basic HTML and HTML5. We left off learning how to link to internal sections of a page with anchor element. In this lesson, we'll try to go through the rest of these. Let's see what we can get done. Let's go ahead and start. Nest an anchor element within a paragraph. So you can nest links within other text elements. Here's a paragraph. Here's a link to freecodecamp.org for you to follow. Link to freecodecamp.org is wrapped around an anchor tag, which means link to freecodecamp.org will be in blue or clickable. Let's break down the example. Normal text is wrapped in the P element. Here's a ... for you to follow. Next is the anchor element, a opening, which requires a closing tag. So that's the clickable stuff that's going to go in between it. Target is an anchor tag attribute that specifies where to open the link, and the value blank specifies to open the link in a new tab. So href is an anchor tag attribute that contains the URL address of the link, freecodecamp.org. That's our hypertext reference. And we're saying go here. And anything clicked within the ... will go to this URL. The text link to freecodecamp.org within the anchor element called anchor text will display a link to click link to freecodecamp.org. The final output of the example will look like this. This is exactly what it will look like. Here's a link to freecodecamp.org for you to follow. So now nest your existing A element within a new P element just after the existing main element. The new paragraph should have text that says view more cat photos, where cat photos is the link, and the rest of the text is plain. Easy enough. We go to the top. We already have cat photos here. They just want us to create a P element that says view more, and then cat photos is already here, so we just end our P tag there. So if we look here on our side, we have view more cat photos just like it asked. So let's see if that passes. We did pass. Let's go to the next one. Make dead links using the hash symbol. So sometimes you want to add anchor elements to your website before you know where they link to. This is also handy when you're changing the behavior of a link using JavaScript, which we'll learn about later. The current value of the href attribute is a link that points to freecatphotoapp.com. Replace the href attribute value with a hashtag, also known as a hash symbol, to create a dead link. For example, href equals hashtag. So this might seem confusing, but let's say we are starting to create our app and we know we want it to link somewhere, but that page might not exist yet, or we don't know what to call it yet. Instead of putting something within the href, we could just simply use the hash symbol. This will allow us to create a dead link, which means it doesn't really go anywhere. So the current value of href attribute is a link that points to freecatphotoapp, which is here. We want to change it to a dead link, which doesn't really go anywhere. Right now, if I click that, it'll take me somewhere which isn't anywhere actually because it doesn't exist. Watch, let's try it. Open a link. See, domain is parked. So we don't want people to see that. So we create this dead link, which is just like a hash symbol. So we still have our link, but now it's considered a dead link. At the end of this, we'll see this more when I show you guys an example, because here for some reason when I click that, it opens a new tab. It shouldn't go anywhere, but that's besides the point. Let's run test, passed. Turn an image into a link. You can make elements into links by nesting them within an A element. Nest your image within an A element. Here's an example. We have an anchor tag. Within our anchor tag, we have an image. So this image will be clickable, and it will lead to whatever URL we put in the href. Here, it will just lead to a dead link. So remember to use hash symbol as your A element href's property in order to turn it into a dead link. Place the existing image element within an anchor element. Once you've done this, hover over your image with your cursor. Your cursor's normal pointer should become the link clicking pointer. The photo is now a link. So here we're doing an A with an href of dead link or hash symbol. We're closing it there. Then at the end of our link, then at the end of our image, we're closing our anchor. And if we come over here, we could see our image is now clickable. And if we click it, it should just be a dead link. It will open a tab here, which it did. But again, that shouldn't happen once we create our page at the end. So let's run that, past it. Create a bulleted unordered list. HTML has special elements for creating unordered list or bullet point style list. Unordered lists start with an opening UL for unordered list element followed by a number of LI. So these are your list items. Finally, unordered list close with a UL. For example, unordered list has a list item of milk and a list item of cheese. Then we end our unordered list. This would create a bullet point style list of milk and cheese. Remove the last P element and create an unordered list of 3 things that cats love at the bottom of the page. So it says remove our P elements. They're gone. So here they want us to create an unordered list of stuff cats like. Mice, yarn, and of course milk. So if we zoom out, we could see 3 things cat like right under our cat, which is right under here, this image. To run test, did pass. To continue, create an ordered list. HTML has another special element for creating ordered lists or numbered lists. Ordered lists start with an opening OL element followed by a number of LI elements. Finally, ordered lists close with an OL closing element. For example, we have our ordered list, has its list items within it. This would create a numbered list of Garfield and Sylvester. Create an ordered list of the top 3 things cats hate the most. So it doesn't say where, so let's just do it right under where it says top 3 things cats hate. We do an ordered list, close it. Within it, we can do dogs, fleas, water. Let's zoom out. We can see it. We have our ordered list and our unordered list. We should be able to run test, pass, create a text field. So now let's create a web form. Input elements are a convenient way to get input from your user. You can create a text input like this. We have input type equals text. Note that input elements are self-closing. Create an input element of type text below your lists. Below our lists, we want to create an input, which is type text, and it's self-closing. Zoom out. We do have an input here now where we could type in text. Run test. We did a pass. So add placeholder text to a text field. Placeholder text is what is displayed in your input element before your user has inputted anything. You can create placeholder text like so. We have an input type text. Its placeholder is assigned. This is placeholder text. So set the placeholder value of your text input to cat photo URL. Here, placeholder. It equals cat photo URL. And we could see the placeholder text. It informs us what we should type in there. Run test, passed. Next, create a form element. You can build web forms that actually submit data to a server using nothing more than pure HTML. You can do this by specifying an action on your form element. For example, we have our form element here. We're specifying this action, which will take the URL where you want to submit form data. So nest your text field inside a form element and add the action submit cat photo attribute to the form element. So our text field, which is here, we want to nest that within a form. So indent and then close it. Our form takes an action, which is basically where we want to submit our form to. Here it's submit cat photo. So again, the action is the URL where we want to submit our form data to. Let's run test. Nest your text input element within a form element. We did do that. Well, typo, form, try it again. We did pass. So add a submit button to a form. Right now we have this here and we're telling it the URL we want to submit to, but we're not allowed to submit it because there's no button. So let's add a submit button to your form. Clicking this button will send the data from your form to the URL you specified with your form's action attribute. Here's an example submit button. It says button type equals submit. This button submits the form, and then we close it. Add a button as the last element of your form element with a type of submit, and submit as its text. So here we're doing button type is assigned submit, and it should say submit as its text, then close button. Let's zoom out. We do have our submit button now. Run test. We did a pass. Use HTML5 to require a field. You can require specific form fields so that your user will not be able to submit your form until he or she has filled them out. For example, if you want to make a text input field required, you can just add the attribute required within your input element like this. Input type is equal to text, and then we just say required. Make your text input a required field so that your user cannot submit the form without completing the field. Then try to submit the form without inputting any text. See how your HTML5 form notifies you that the field is required. So if we go into our input and just type in required, and we come back over here and we try to submit, we see please fill out this field. Run test, we pass. Next, create a set of radio buttons. You can use radio buttons for questions where you want the user to only give you one answer out of multiple options. Radio buttons are a type of input. Each of your radio buttons can be nested within its own label element. By wrapping an input element inside of a label element, it will automatically associate the radio button input with the label element surrounding it. All related radio buttons should have the same name attribute to create a radio button group. By creating a radio group, selecting any single radio button will automatically deselect the other buttons within the same group, ensuring only one answer is provided by the user. Here's an example of a radio button. We have a label and then an input within there, which is type radio. Name is assigned indoor-outdoor, and it'll say indoor. It's considered best practice to set a for attribute on the label element with a value that matches the value of the ID attribute of the input element. This allows assistive technologies to create linked relationships between the label and the child input element. For example, label for indoor, input ID equals indoor, type equals radio, name equals indoor outdoor, and then we specify that one is for the indoor button. Add a pair of radio buttons to your form, each nested in its own label element. One should have the option of indoor and the other should have the option of outdoor. Both should share the name attribute of indoor-outdoor to create a radio group. Like it says, we want to add a pair of radio buttons to our form. Our form is here, so each nested in its own label element. So let's create a label here. This will be for the first one. And similar to this one here, we're doing input, which says indoor. The label will be for indoor. Input, we could do type equals radio. Name will be indoor outdoor. So let's copy this, and here we'll change it to outdoor and outdoor. So we look over here, we do have the indoor outdoor, and only one can be selected since they're both part of the indoor outdoor. Let's run test. We did pass. So create a set of checkboxes. Forms commonly use checkboxes for questions that may have more than one answer. Checkboxes are a type of input. Each of your checkboxes can be nested within its own label element. By wrapping an input element inside of a label element, it will automatically associate the checkbox input with the label element surrounding it. All related checkbox inputs should have the same name attribute. It is considered best practice to explicitly define the relationship between the checkbox input and its corresponding label by setting the for attribute on the label element to match the ID attribute of the associated input element. Here's an example of a checkbox. It has a label for loving, the input ID is loving, type checkbox, name personality, and then we have it display loving. So add to your form a set of 3 checkboxes. Each checkbox should be nested within its own label element. All 3 should share the name attribute of personality. So why don't I just go here, copy these 2 labels, just add them anywhere since it doesn't specify. Let's do 3 of them. So we can do, instead of radio, do checkbox. Wrong one. We got these 3 labels, so checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. Each checkbox should be nested within its own label. All 3 should share the name attribute of personality. So all 3 are within their own label. We can do So add to your form a set of 3 checkboxes. It should be nested within its own label. All 3 should share the name attribute of personality. Maybe we did a little too much. So within here we have this input. Maybe they don't need IDs yet. Didn't say to set IDs. Didn't say to set 4s. But all 3 should share the name attribute of personality. Doesn't even say they should say anything. I don't even know. Let's see. We have 3 different checkboxes here. I don't know if we have to write any personalities. Let's run this. Guess not. But as long as we understand that in order to relate the 3 checkboxes, we give them a name, and we know that whichever one of these clicked or are clicked will be associated to that name attribute. Let's actually continue looking at this and maybe change wild, funny, sleepy, so we can actually know what we're checking. So again, let's run that. Go to the next one. Check radio buttons and checkboxes by default. So you can set a checkbox or radio button to be checked by default using the checked attribute, similar to required. To do this, just add the word checked to the inside of an input element. For example, input type radio, name equals test name, and then we just say checked. Set the first of your radio buttons and the first of your checkboxes to both be checked by default. So we go to our input and we go checked. And then instead of our checkbox, the same, we say checked. Go down, first of each are checked. Run that. Go to the next. Nest many elements within a single div element. The div element, also known as a division element, is a general purpose container for other elements. The div element is probably the most commonly used HTML element of all. Just like any other non-self-closing element, you can open a div element with div and close it on another line with closing div. So nest your things cats love and things cats hate lists all within a single div. And try putting your opening div tag above things cats love element and the closing div after. Okay, so things cats love, we'll put in our div here and we'll end it under that. So now we have this invisible box you can't see that's wrapped around this area. And again, if I was to Control Shift I to see my, if I was to Command Shift I or Command Option I, and then go here, go down here to this area, we'll see there's a div there. And now it's wrapped around things cats love and things cats hate. Run test, passed. Next, declare the doc type of an HTML document. They actually should have did this first in my opinion. So the challenges so far have covered specific HTML tags and their uses. However, there are a few elements that give overall structure to your page and should be included in every HTML document. At the top of your document, you need to tell the browser which version of HTML your page is using. HTML is an evolving language and is updated regularly. Most major browsers support the latest specifications, which is HTML5. However, older web pages may use previous versions of the language. You tell the browser this information by adding DOCTYPE declaration on the first line where the ... part is the version of HTML. For HTML5, you use DOCTYPE HTML. The exclamation in uppercase DOCTYPE is important, especially for older browsers. The HTML is not case sensitive. Next, the rest of your HTML code needs to be wrapped in HTML tags. The opening HTML goes directly below the DOCTYPE HTML line. Next, the rest of your HTML code needs to be wrapped in HTML tags. The opening HTML goes directly below DOCTYPE HTML line, and the closing HTML goes at the end of the page. Here's an example of the page structure. We have DOCTYPE HTML, then we have the HTML opening and closing, and then all our code will go within there. So add a DOCTYPE tag for HTML5 to the top of the blank HTML document in the code editor. Under it, add opening and closing HTML tags. So they just want us to do DOCTYPE HTML, under it our opening and closing tags. That, run test. Oh, we forgot, which wrap around in H1. So we want it to wrap around in H1. It says hello world. H1, zoom out, we see it here. Run test, we did pass. So define the head and body of an HTML document. You can add another level of organization in your HTML document within the HTML tags with the head and body elements. Any markup with information about your page would go into the head tag. Then any markup with the content of the page, what displays for a user, would go into the body tag. Metadata elements such as link, meta, title, style typically go inside the head element. Here's an example of a page's layout. We have our DOCTYPE declaration, and we have HTML closing, HTML opening and closing tags, all our stuff within it. The top would be our head, which is metadata of our site, and then the body would have all the page content. So edit the markup so there's a head and body. The head element should only include the title, and the body element should only include the H1 and P. So let's go up here. We have our DOCTYPE HTML, and then it closes here. So the head should include our title, and then our body would hold everything else. So this is basically the layout of an HTML page or web page. It has a DOCTYPE at the top, then HTML opening and closing, then the head, which contains our title, and then the body, which contains all our content. Anyways, I'm trying to make it look better. It doesn't really matter as long as we're understanding the concepts. Let us take all this though, since we are pretty much done with the HTML section. Let's run test. We did pass it. So let's actually I did copy it. I don't need to make sure. Let's just paste that code. Oh, I guess I never copied it. So we want to grab this code, copy that, go back here, paste it there, save it, and then go to our Finder, find sample, open this up, and we do see that. If I inspect, we do see we have our HTML DOCTYPE up here, and our head, which includes the title, which we can see here, the best page ever, and then the body, which is all here. So we can, of course, use some of the stuff we learned, like unordered list, and then close it. And within here, do our list items. Happy, food, some random. Save that, go back, refresh, and we do see our unordered list. We can link the word happy within our list item by doing an anchor element and making it a dead link by doing an href hash symbol, saving that, going back, refreshing. Now see it's a dead hash. It doesn't go anywhere, unlike our freeCodeCamp lesson, which opens a new page to the wrong page. But this is what should happen when you create a dead link. It doesn't go anywhere. We could, under that, create a form, close our form. Our form can have a label. Within there we have our input, type equals text, placeholder equals type something here. Label could say, and then under this we do button type equals submit, and say submit me. Save that. Something, click submit. Doesn't go anywhere. By default it just refreshes the page, but we can make it go somewhere by maybe doing action and saying google.com. What do we do? HTTPS. Oh, what do you know? Goes to google.com. So we've learned a bunch of random stuff. Still not enough to really do much, but we're learning the tool set which will allow us to create awesome stuff. So you basically have learned how to go onto your own computer, create your own folder, create a file within that folder, called index.html, whatever you want to call it, .html. Within there, put a doctype declaration at the top, then HTML opening and closing tags, and then within there, a title and a head, which I obviously forgot here. Head, closing head, and then body, and then closing body would be right after form, body. So indenting is also super helpful to know where everything is. Like we would definitely want to fix our indenting here. All our content is within our body, so we should push that in. Now this can be like that, and that's a little bit easier to read, even though our, oh no, yeah, should be good. So anyways, kind of going overboard, we learned quite a bunch of HTML syntax. It's like the grammar. Can't create a masterpiece book without first understanding the grammar of how to create sentence structures and whatnot. And that's where we're at right now. But in the next lessons, we'll learn styling, how to make stuff look prettier, nicer, and suit our own individual taste. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe if you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.